ino Kenya twaitire thakame tukingata muthungu.
Thank you mana muthikiriria wakwa uyu ni Rutengeseni na nijokite nigetha tunyitanire nawe tabarire no njega muno yakirira mitugo na unduire witu. Ngai mutora muoyo arogocwo.
Thai thathaia Ngai witu thai. Njitagwo Marilyn Wanjiru na ndi mucera wa bari ya Gathogo. Na madam ndiwe kana we ni urarire bathaka? Ni he arata kwa rirariria mbere gukorwo magithinja turari nao. Na ni marakenirio ndu cio na matiuwi. Angado matithoma akirikaniro. Na ni marakenirio muno na marauga ni meguthii na mbere na thiguko ya megateta ri meibie. Na mundu anda kuruga uri urenda kumenya ri. Mundu aruge na ngano itari no ya nduka-ini yani ngano wigurire ngano thie. Ucoke uruge na supagi.
Maguta maria maumangu makuri kirimo kia iria. Igakorwo igana ni uikorwo ikirite okorwo ni gaswite na kanini. Niguo. Kwoguo ri turathie na mbere na thiguko ya mugate utari wimbie. Riu twambiriirie Saturday niyo muthenya wa mbere. Tuthie riu Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday ri niguo muthenya wa muico na Ngai akauga ni muthenya wa kuhuruka. Kwoguo Friday tutigakorwo wira ni kuhuruka ni undu wa gitio kuhe Ngai gitio tugakorwo tukihinga mahoya macio na Saturday ri na niguo Jumamothi ri ndigikorwo wi thabato ya Ngai. Riu haha Ngai ni atuhe thiko igire cia kuhuruka. Riu ri mundu wa biashara tonda githia live ri ungihe Ngai gitio ri na biashara yaku itwike ni kurathimo ni ugutherema ri no wega ni njugaga atiri ni ndire ndathie live Marilyn tutuko toto Ngai ahete ri ni kuhurukaga nake Ngai akandathima ni kuhuruka tirivu ati itari ndathime
ni live no rakarathimo iguru oguo
niguo no riu Marilyn ri ni ndina kieha na undu uyu ni ngwaria tondu riu ni njaritie haha uhoro wa ndege cigeita thumu na ni ndirona ta thirikari yoi kana ta thirikari iramenya riu nie haha I am calling on the president with his excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta please tondu ndumiriri citu ciraoneka ta citarakinya nie ni ngwenda amenye atiriri bururi uri under attack na nigetha andu othe mamenye niguo ri ni urona mbura ni yurite mai maingi muno no mimera ri ndiri na riri na ndirahota kuriruka na ninguhura ka record mwisho wa program ino na please mundu wothe uranjigua akinyerie ndobererie no thirikari tondu thutha wa mwaka umwe ri ni tugukorwo na undu tutangihota ku reverse undu tutangihota gucoka mite ito yothe igukorwo yumite Marilyn nyeki igukorwo yumite na guku gutigatura andu na gutire mundu utakakorwo akilaumiwa ni undu wa uhoro uyu kana ikorwo ni mundu wa kawaida wi gicagi kana ikorwo ni chifu kana ikorwo ni thirikari kana ikorwo ni MP kwanza andu makaragia makahuru tondu ndu uyu wekika maitho-ine maitu na nie ni njugite na nie ni ndutete wira wakwa Ngai arohe uhoti angikorwo basi ni tukurekereria bururi uyu ri nie Marilyn ndi kuhenania tondu riri ndungigeikara na andu marendia bururi wao niguo tondu how long Marilyn ni hinda rigana njikarite ya na ndegeri njorie tukendo please nende ndiraigwa ngiturwo muno na undu uyu ndauga wa mwisho ndege citare cia passenger ri ciratinda cikiomboka atia Kiambu Rift Valley cigakinya nginya Gitare cikagaroroka ndege citare cia passenger cigakorwo ciromboka citore cithiurukaga Kirinyaga cigoka ciukanitie na Murang'a cigoka ninge cigoka na guku cigathie na guku Kajiado ndege citare cia passenger ciromboka atia ruti citare cia ndege na ni majeti na tijeti emwe Marilyn ni urauga ona Kiambu ni murona ndege igire cikihitukana haya uguo noguo ndathire nginya Nyeri ngiona ndege nirakorwo irutite ndogo ukona tare ndogo ria ya jeti no ndogo ya jeti ya kawaida tondu ikoragwo ni mvukeri mai ungicamokia ri ndogo ya mai kwoguo ri ndogo iyo ri ikoragwo ina mita nini tu ndege ya hituka ri mita nini na igacoka igathira gike ni ndawa ikahana tare gitogo na gitirathira kuria yumire na kuria nginya thaici ri no itigite muraini ucio ni ndawa ino ri iratukana na matu maitu yatukana na matu maitu ri he maundu meri marekika. One, mbura iwe kiura ri meri ya metere niranywa ndawa iyo na iratuika atiriri meri niwe kwamba kufutha nikio rona mete ni miurere na ndire na hiri wayo. Haya ungirora na irio ri citirathie nyekire ndirakura o niguo na ndege icio riu cirahura thumu utuko na muthenya nie ndiracigwa na ngaciona. Urenda kuga ati mundu uri Kenya Air Force ndaraciona no ndaramaka na iyo tiruti ya passenger. Mundu uri JKIA ri ni arona kuri ndege cire Kiambu na tishia passenger areciria niki cireka na icio ni ndege cia mbara. Marilyn turahoro ni ndege cia mbara turi na itarito. Yes, no mundu agatua ni kazi ya Uhuru ataonaje ndege saa ngapi na saa hii yako kwa mkutano? Niki kirato manginya security force ito ikoro idiranyita wega niki tondu gutire mundu uri wa asainirwo wira ucio wathi gwa CID matira understand ndathi kwa Foridi Marilyn matiraelewa tondu weti wira wake ti ndege riu nie ndirauga atiriri ni wira wao riu ni wira wa witu ithuothe riu ri nie ri ndigatarwo hau ni ndarikia wira wako nie ndirauga atiriri ningumuhorera record ya mutumia wathire UN 2015 UN iria irega gukorwo Paris na niaugire uhoro wa mete yo kuma na kuri America mekire experiment ino ri gutire mete gutire nyeki na nendaugire haha na arafu ri macokete magathi makaheni atiriri ate volcano mwaki uri ukoragwo na guku thi na guku rungu ri ate ni wonete crack hando ugoka haguhi na miri ya mete yo ate ni weracina nikiona kwa urare mete ndirariuka eni riu ri tawecirie guku gutare mete gutire nyeki gutire irio ndo no gukua no riu ri na ongikweka riu no gutigana na andu to wene waruta wira wa no ikorwo ni kuri undu ugwiko na ni I'm telling the president tondu president ni endete muno wira wake guku gutigukoro na andu gutigukoro na andu ni guthira turathira thaicire gutire ndawa thumu ire turahuhia na maniuru no thumu uri mai-ini ore mai-ini Marilyn na mai-ini momu yo kugotwani wa mai na riu ri ona Ngai ateithagia andu meteithĩtie tungigiatia na military aircrafts 10 ciromboka into the airspace ya Kenya ati na Kenya Air Force ndiwe na ati minister wa security ndoi ati na nginya ona gutire ona mundu ona nginya muthigari kana CID uramenya gutire nginya andu wa NSIS maramenya military aircrafts are attacking the country. We are here na already evident na neturashiona na we are trying everything to report na gutire mundu reka anything. Okay, thikereria UN United Nation ikilaumiwa ni aria mathire mucamanio ucio makiuga ndege icio ni cigutomandu nginya mage irio niwona na mucamanio ucio ithuĩ member twari na nduku na matioke mauge guku na riu ri o andu ucio mathiete ri makaga kuona ndege nicio ici. Marilyn, it is over maundu mamwe ri ni makinyaga mwisho nie gutiri undu ona gutiri undu nguga angikorwo bururi utotongoragio ni arume nio anene othe ya departments yothe cia thirikari na nio macifu nio kira kindu na riu ndwe turathi gukua mbere yao mathiete ure maugaga atiriri nyinyi wa mama ni stress inawashi nginyona haku uthiukero thiukahikio riu muthikiriria wira uyu uria umete nguma kore YouTube wandika United Nations admits chemtrails are real na mutumia uria we haha aretie mari thiine wa mushamanio wa United Nation General Assembly's UN meeting ya September 2015 uguo ni kuga mweri wa kenda mwaka ucio muthiru na mutumia uyu ni augite atiriri uma ate thirikari ne ciowe especially cia America ne cirathi cigeitagiriria chemical njuru muno kuri andu nigetha andu manyihe na ningere ate maundu maya marathi magitestagwo hari andu ri ni maundu magutuma nginya irio cinyihe na nginya anando no makue na riu gwenda umenye atiriri we uri muthikiriria ino niyo proof ate maundu maria tukoretwo tukiaria haha ni mauma na maundu maya ni maranidi andu mekinge na niaugite atiri thirikari ciothe kuria ndege icio cirire makanane na uhoro uyu magerie kucirugamia tondu undu uyu ni ugutuma nginya mite yome tondu thumu uyu wakinya miri-ini ya mite no kuma na irio ciciage na ninge niaugite atiriri hap na niyo iria iracina nayo maturi tondu nie ni nyonete gicina nginyona Jumamothi ni ndonire matu magicina riria maracina matu mahana atiriri handu hawone buru na white matu ma white na kuria iguru ni buru ri urona riri white eno igakoro ithirite biu ikahana ta gatogo riu ukona buru ihakitwo gatogo kau ka white riu ukona atiriri ndurona itu kando na buru kando urona ici tukanite kahana tari kuhakinirira uguo na nenguga mashini imwe ya hub iri thiini wa guku Nairobi iri gatagati nganguma meteorological department kuria Ngong Road na nginya kirima kiria kia Ngong Hills hau uguo gatagati hau uguo tondu niho nie nyonaga area iyo matu ma kuu nimo mambagiriria gucinwo na mathie area ihana atiriri ni gikenge gia cuma arafu gigacoka gigakiranio ni kindu ta mutharaba ukomete wona mutharaba uyu wakoma ukaharukio kuri gikenge giki handu ta 3 quarter arafu to waya tukauma kona inya iria cia mutharaba uyu ukomete ri cigoka cikahutia kamucuri ka gikenge giki gicikuite riu waya icio cihana uguo no makoro ringi makometie mitharaba iri tondu na ngathi mutharaba wa gatagati wa 3 quarter uguo nigetha nacio kira mutharaba ugakorwo tumicuri twa mutharaba uyu ukomete ri waya cigoka igathie nginya gikenge-ini giki haria gacumbiri-ini iguru iyo niyo mashini iri iracina matu guku Kenya na mundu wothe ona erio ni ciathirire erio iria turahuthira riu ni DSTV kana okoro ni Zuku kana aria angi icio turahuthira tu dish ni guthie wone muci ungi wina madishi manene marekirirwo ro riu na andu matirauga na nginya macibo matirauga madishi macio ri no mwakomenya ati iyo ni communication yambiriria kuu na no ikorwo ni weragia andu rekei twehuge ni ithuĩ tũgwĩteithia Ngai agĩtũteithagia ri ndũngĩkĩreka thũ ĩtinde gũkũ guta tũtarĩ na ndege citũ nĩ tũteithanie na tũteithie president tondu no korwo ni andu a president marakeninwo tondu ndege ĩyo wona yatua kumana na gũkũ Karen ĩrathiĩ twĩkanĩtie Kiambu yothe ĩgathiĩ Naivasha Rift Valley yothe ĩgathiĩ gũtĩmĩra kũrĩa Mount Elgon ĩgĩcoka ri ĩrathiĩ yambatĩte na kũrĩa Kĩrĩnyaga ĩathiũrũrũka na kũu ningĩ ĩkauma na kũu ĩgoka yũkĩte ĩthimĩte Nairobi ĩgacoka ningĩ ĩgacoka ĩkagarũrũka ĩgarora na kũrĩa ningĩ yumana na gũkũ Rift Valley rĩu ri tokorwo no mbara o iria ciũkaga kũnina andũ tũtanamba gũthiĩ gĩthurano nĩ wakĩmenya gũkũ twarĩ ũhoro wa macungwa na marigũ rĩu ndiĩ kana haha ngũkiuga kĩ na kĩ nĩ ũrakĩmenya onawe.
I'm going to just introduce Khalid Dawood, who will introduce the speakers. So, Khalid, thank you very much for moderating this session, and I turn it over to you, and I will return in about 3 minutes.
So our next speaker is Dr. Rosalind Peterson. She's the California president and co-founder of the Agriculture Defense Coalition, formed in 2006 to protect agricultural crop production from uncontrolled experimental weather modification programs. A very interesting topic, you know, for a non-specialized person like myself. But also very interesting in her CV that we have with you is also her extensive efforts to protect drinking water supplies from toxic chemical contamination in Martinez, California. That's a very interesting topic, of course, and I was actually wondering myself whether you can tackle whether the same experiments that you're holding in California could be extended to other world countries, particularly poor and developed countries like where we come from. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It is a pleasure to be here to speak with all of you today. One of the things that I would like to say is that we are in a global drumbeat right at the moment talking about climate change and global warming. One of the things that is affected by climate change is agriculture. But some of what we are seeing is man-made, but man-made in a different way than you may guess. Weather modification programs, experimental ones done by private companies, done by the United States government, done by states across the United States are underway. There's more than 50 of them in operation across the United States. All of these impact agriculture because they change the microclimates needed for agriculture to survive. None of these programs that I know of today, and this is all public record, are available at any time with oversight, agricultural oversight or public oversight. These programs impact agriculture, and there are programs around the world. International corporations are modifying our weather all the time, and they're modifying it in ways that cover thousands and thousands of square miles. Most of it is chemically altered, so that what happens is that we are putting chemicals, ground-based chemicals that are shot into the air, or chemicals coming from airplanes that change and modify our weather. So one of the things that I'm concerned about and that we need to address in the future is how these programs are impacting microclimates needed for our crops to survive and needed for pollination. If we change the growing season, the pollinators may not survive, and also our crops, our flowers, and our tree crops may not get the pollination needed. So one of my areas is looking at this situation to see if we can begin to put under control experimental and other types of weather modification programs. The other issue is that a lot of times we're talking about mitigation for climate change. It's rather an undefined term at this period of time. And so what happens is that many times we're talking about artificially putting chemicals like sulfur or particulates into the atmosphere in what they call geoengineering schemes to reduce and help the planet, supposedly, but help the planet to not go through such a tremendous global climate change and to mitigate global warming. However, the incidence of putting chemicals into our atmosphere is going to change and impact agricultural crop production. And if you take and you put up into our skies chemicals to reduce the amount of sunlight reaching the earth, you are going to begin to reduce crop production. Studies at the University of Illinois on corn crop production show reductions. Without the process of photosynthesis, whereby plants from direct sunlight gain the energy to grow, to produce crops, we are going to find ourselves, if we mitigate in that direction, impacting the crop production not only here in the United States, but worldwide. One of the things that is impacting crop production right now in the United States and reducing photosynthesis and also impacting the ability of solar power panels to generate the type of power that they should is persistent jet contrails. NASA talks about persistent jet contrails as exacerbating global warming because they trap warmth in the atmosphere when they produce cirrus and man-made clouds. NASA also talks about that these aircraft leaving persistent contrails are changing our climate. And when they change our climate to the degree that one jet can leave a persistent jet contrail which will spread across our skies from what this picture up here on my left on the screen looks like, which is a trail left by a jet, that trail can expand to 4,000 kilometers and last for 20 hours. This was unheard of in the early 60s and the 70s, and it wasn't until the late 1980s that there was a change and we started to have persistent jet contrails that persist. NASA studies show that part of our global warming problem could be attributed to these types of contrails and the jets that leave them. So one of the issues as we go through is how do you like your skies, natural or man-made? And right now we are making man-made clouds, and this is trapping warmth in our atmosphere. The climate change that is produced by these jets, not all jets, mostly some non-commercial, but what happens to our skies is that we start to see the changes. The man-made clouds do trap the warmth, and they increase the humidity. This allows for pests to proliferate, diseases, molds, mildews, funguses, and viruses. This is a man-made cloud, ladies and gentlemen, and these pictures I took myself over Northern California, and this is a burst. This is where a jet left a huge plume. and this at the end of it to a burst. And this is not normal, never seen before in our county historically, and I was born and raised there. This is another picture showing the jet trail just before the burst. This is our skies, and I want you to know that what you're seeing now, a lot of times many scientists know, especially at NASA and in other areas, that the skies that we're seeing are not normal cloud formations. These are man-made. And what happens as we reduce the amount of sunlight in a form of global dimming, we reduce the solar power with these type of clouds, and we reduce photosynthesis, which is going to impact agriculture. The pictures look odd. The formations don't look like normal clouds that people have seen before historically. This is another type of man-made cloud, and what we have done and what you're seeing here is we have the photographs from the times that the jet leaves the first trail as a thin, spindly trail to where they form into these different types of cloud formations. All of you can start looking up and seeing this. What happens is that there are experiments, and there's a color, you can see some color in this photograph. And part of what we're doing also is we're sending up canisters. The United States government, NASA, the U.S. Air Force, is sending up canisters into the atmosphere filled with chemicals to modify and experiment with ionosphere. And when we modify an ionosphere up here, we create experiments which they can see through these persistent jet contrails as they stay in the sky for long periods of time, and they can watch the experiments. The type of chemicals they are using are aluminum, barium, strontium, and these canisters are sent up on rockets, and what they do is they superheat the canisters to create experiments in our atmosphere. The experiments can give you colorful about as being wonderful. Many times people think that the auroras in Alaska and the ones we see are normal, but there's beginning to be more and more seen across the United States and elsewhere where aluminum, trimethyl aluminum experiments to make clouds are beginning to impact us. The reason I am concerned for agriculture is that none of these experiments have any public oversight nor agricultural oversight. Our drinking water is impacted because the chemicals are now beginning to show up in our drinking water. In California, the State Department of Health drinking water tests were examined between 1970 and this year, and we found unusual spiking in barium, aluminum, strontium, magnesium, calcium, manganese, and all of these spiked at the same time in various drinking water supplies across the state of California and also in Arizona. So what's happening with these atmospheric tests is that aluminum, as one example, gets into, with increased pollution and acid rain, gets into the root systems of our crop trees and our trees. Root systems can no longer absorb the water and the nutrients needed to survive. Many of our forests in Redding, California and other areas are dying. The oak trees, the redwood trees, the Douglas fir across the United States, many areas. We believe that these trees are impacted because they cannot absorb enough water because aluminum is going into their root system. Mildew and fungus from warmer temperatures produced by persistent jet contrails are also allowing pests and molds to proliferate, also impacting tree health and crop health. The skies that you see up here, it is important to note, have a white haze to them. When crossing the United States 2 days ago, we saw this man-made produced haze all the way across the United States. There were a few real clouds. We saw the persistent trails from the jet windows, and the skies in the white haze looked a lot like this. So one of the things that we need to really look at is that jet fuel emissions contaminate our air much as automobile exhaust. They know from scientific studies back in the study that they deplete beneficial ozone in the atmosphere by releasing nitric acid. So one of the things that we need to look at is the impact of just jet fuel and just the emissions from jets as well. I want to and talk briefly about a couple of issues here that I think are important to realize. If we don't look at the problems that we are creating, the atmospheric testing programs, in other words, the jet contrails that are warming our climate, and we say to ourselves, we want to geoengineer something else. We want to add more particulates to help global warming or to stop climate change. What we're going to have is we're going to have a pea soup up there of chemicals which are going to be detrimental to our health. It is much better to take the EPA model of the 1970s, where the Environmental Protection Agency was designed to put in regulations to reduce the pollution at its source, to reduce and put caps on how much pollution corporations, cars, automobiles were putting into the atmosphere. One of the things that we're talking about as mitigation is to go into geoengineering plans which add more chemicals to our atmosphere, which are going to get into our drinking water supplies, which are going to get into our soils, which are going to impact our trees. Our trees across the United States, many of them in many areas, especially Mendocino, Lake, and Sonoma County, are dying. They are not healthy as they used to be. And this problem, having traveled across the United States into some other areas, seeing the pictures coming in from across the United States and other countries, we're finding that there's beginning to be an impact from all of these programs and all the chemicals in our skies. And so one of the things we need to think about and work for is reducing pollution. Alan Buckman from the California State Department in Fish and Game talked about microbes, and they're important to the environment. We have at our disposal already some technologies and already the wherewithal to begin to make the planet more healthy and to put it into a different perspective. But if we go to the geoengineering schemes that are waiting in the wings, thousands of them, to put the particulates up and sulfur, then we are going to be in trouble with agriculture across the United States and around the world. It is time that we look at some different solutions that are already here, and it's time that we look at what's happening in our skies and say we don't need to add any more chemicals, we are doing enough. And what these experiments in our skies are doing with atmospheric heating and testing, we don't know, but the chemicals are showing up in our drinking water. So in closing, I would like to say to all of you and to encourage you to know that just what I showed you today is beginning to impact crop production in the United States. And we're seeing higher UV radiation that is burning the tips of our trees and our plants. We see the molds and mildews growing here. And we see all of this. And we hope that all of you will consider before you think of mitigation and just go forward with some of the plans that are being sold to you as almost a cap-and-trade situation, where a corporation like Planktos decides to put iron dust into the Galapagos Islands area. This is a proposal, may have already started, and to create algae blooms. And yes, they're saying, yes, we're going to help the environment because we're going to create these algae blooms for more oxygen. But what happens is it's going to impact the marine life in those areas. As a geoengineering plan, it is going to be sold, the credits for this, the supposed benefits, is to be sold as credits to people who want to pollute more. And here's the really awful twist to this, in my opinion, is if we sell pollution credits to polluters to ask them so that they can pollute more, we're only going to add more to our climate change and to our global warming processes. We have to say, no, we don't want money market schemes that are going to go into the ocean and change something possibly to the detriment of our oceans or our air in order to sell credits to someone who wants to pollute more. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a consideration for all of you when you start to talk about caps and trades, when you start to talk about geoengineering plans, because we don't need a money market scheme. We need to have and use the microbes available to us, the science available to us to reduce the pollution that we're putting into the atmosphere. and we need a new direction, and I think that this might be a good one. So I hope that all of you will consider what I have to say today, and I want to thank you once again for listening to what I had to say.
Thank you.
Rĩu mathikĩrĩria wĩira ũyũ ũngĩ naguo umĩte ngume kũrĩ internet atĩ NASA confesses dosing Americans with airborne lithium chemicals. Lithium nĩ chemical njoru mũno rĩrĩa ĩkoretwo ĩkĩheo andũ tondũ nĩ ĩtũmĩkaga thĩinĩ wa depression. Andũ aya ũrona makĩĩita na maũndũ ta macio. Rĩu rĩ, thikĩrĩria wĩira ũyũ na NASA rĩ nĩ wakĩmenya nĩ rũhonge rwa America rũrĩa rũikagia roketi kũrĩa igũrũ. Nĩo marakiuga nĩguo atĩ nĩ makoretwo magĩitĩrĩria andũ lithium. No rĩrĩ kĩndũ kĩrĩa gĩothe kĩrekĩka kũrĩa America ĩkoragwo nĩ sample ya kwĩbundithia ũndũ ũcio. Na kũndũ kũingĩ kũrĩa gwaitĩrĩirio indo ici rĩ thikũ ici gũtirĩ kĩndũ kĩmeraga. No mekaga ũguo nĩgetha mamenye ũrĩa gũgwĩkĩka nĩgetha rĩu moke meke ũndũ ũcio na hinya mũnene mũno na gũkũ. Koguo kĩrĩa America maracaba nĩ kanuguta. Kĩrĩa Africa ĩgũcaba nĩ kĩũndũ kĩnene mũno. Kĩrĩa mũndũ ũyũ ambĩte kageria kũrĩa na akona nĩkĩekĩka.
Hi everyone, this is Sudarshan 5, Global Truth. Well, NASA has confessing to dosing Americans with airborne lithium and other chemicals. So that's also known as chemtrails. So there's an official explanation for why NASA is spraying lithium, a pharmaceutical drug most often used to treat people with manic depression or bipolar disorder, into our ionosphere, and then there's the probable reason. So it would be easier to accept NASA's official explanation if they were not so secretive about everything they study and do in space. But one thing is for certain, NASA's own personnel have admitted that lithium, along with other chemicals, are intentionally being placed into our environment regularly. It is possible that many of NASA's own employees aren't even aware of the true motivations for carrying out such a project, ironically displaying the very behaviors of these chemicals pharmaceuticals are meant to instill. So, in the first bombshell video here, they say NASA employee admits that lithium is being sprayed into the atmosphere and says it's harmless to the environment. Before I give you NASA's official explanation of why they're spraying the psych meds over hundreds of thousands of Americans, I'd like to point to you some references so you can do your own research and discover that this is no conspiracy theory. It is very real, and there is ample scientific documentation to corroborate what I put forth here. So the author is putting forth a PubMed abstract titled Feasibility of Aerosol Vaccinations in Humans, discussing this, how the increase in antigen volumes can be beneficial in aerosol delivery of vaccines. So see, they put those vaccines right into the chemtrails and spray it all over the people. So the abstract also admits that several thousand human subjects have already been aerosol vaccinated with live attenuated measles and influenza A vaccines. Okay, so they're talking about vaccines here. And yeah, it's no surprise that they are spraying lithium into the air. They're spraying much more than just lithium, but here it says lithium alters how we think by changing the levels of serotonin and norepinephrine secreted by our endocrine system. Lithium strongly alters the brain system, yet the NASA employee in the above video stated it's not dangerous. They are purposely spraying this stuff in the air to use as mind control upon us, because a lot of the things they're spraying do indeed affect our brains in some way or another, and it makes our brains more forgetful, less remembering, more dulled down, it's easier to control. So that's one reason. It also weakens our immunity by spraying us down with a bunch of heavy metals. So it's all a part of the depopulation plan elite, and this is just another piece of evidence that goes to show that they're purposely spraying this stuff into the air. So you can check out this article. It's very informative. They put in a lot of things you can read here. So just be aware that they're spraying these chemtrails every day, daily, across all major cities of the world and in other areas as well. That's pretty much the update. So NASA confesses to dosing Americans with airborne lithium and other chemicals. Okay, thanks for listening. This has been Surashan 5.
Andũ aitũ nĩ mwakĩiguĩra atĩ NASA arĩa maikagia rocket kũrĩa igũrũ America nĩ maugĩte nĩ maraitĩrĩria andũ lithium, na wĩra wa lithium nĩ ũtũme tũkorwo tũrĩ akĩĩgu tũikare ũguo tũgege, na nĩkĩo ũrona ndege icio rĩu nĩ cihana ta ciagĩte mũndũ ũngĩcirũgamia gũkũ, na ũndũ ũyũ mareka kũndũ kũingĩ. No rĩrĩ nĩ atĩ ona chemtrails icio nĩ ciatuĩka nĩ cirĩ na vaccine thĩinĩ wacio. Rĩu ndikĩoĩ nĩ vaccine ĩrĩkũ tũraitĩrĩria gũkũ, kana na mũno nyonaga hĩndĩ ciothe mũthũngũ agĩũka gũitĩrĩria gũkũ andũ thumu akoragwo agĩũka kũmanina hinya wa ũciari. Rĩu niĩ nĩguo ndĩrona vaccine ĩrĩa ĩraitwo kũrĩa igũrũ gũtirĩ mũrimũ andũ a Kenya maugĩte nĩ arwaru. Mũrimũ ũrĩa mũthũngũ arona tũngĩkorwo tũrĩ arwaru nĩ atĩ ithuĩ tũrĩ wendo na tũrĩ number 1, na hau nĩho aroka kũnina, tondũ mũndũrũme Mũafrika kwanza wa igongona rĩa irua ndũngĩmũringithania na mũthũngũ. Ũyũ Mũafrika nĩ mũfalume wa wendo, na nĩkĩo wonaho na tũbingiri twitũ twathiĩ tũcokaga mũciĩ tũkauga ndikwenda, ũgacoka nake mũthũngũ aturagwo maita 10. Nĩkĩo kĩte na njanjo arahuhĩra kũrĩa igũrũ, ona we ndũraigua kĩnunga, no nĩ gũtũnina hinya wa ũciari. Rĩu mathikĩrĩria wĩra ũrĩa ũrũmĩrĩire haha ndĩũrutĩte YouTube-inĩ yandĩkĩtwo Swedish officials admit toxic chemtrails are real and not a conspiracy. Na rĩu wĩra ũyũ kuga atĩrĩrĩ, ofisa a kũrĩa Sweden a thirikari nĩ maugĩte nĩ kũrĩ na indo njũru ciraitwo kũrĩa rĩera igũrũ, na indo ici nĩ ũma ti atĩ nĩ kĩndũ atĩ kĩgĩa gwĩcirĩria. Na rĩu Swedish officials acio amwe arĩa maugĩte ũguo nĩ rĩrĩ, nĩ Swedish Green Party leader Pernilla Hägberg niwe ũripotetwo nĩ Swedish newspaper ngathĩti yao ĩrĩa ĩtagwo Katrine Holmes Kurain, na niwe mũtongoria wa kĩsiasa wa mbere thĩinĩ wa thĩ gũkorwo nĩ arokĩrĩra ũhoro ũyũ wa andũ gũkorwo magĩitĩrĩrio ndawa njũru, na akauga atĩrĩrĩ atĩ kemiko ĩrĩa ĩraitĩrĩrio andũ nĩ kemiko njũru mũno, tondũ nĩ chemicals, nĩ virus na kĩndũ kiumĩte kũrĩ cuma ta ĩrĩa ĩretwo lithium barium, na akauga atĩrĩrĩ ciothe cigoka thĩinĩ wa chemtrails. Na rĩu akauga atĩrĩrĩ, according to Hedberg, kũitĩrĩria ndawa ici gũkũ rĩera-inĩ ĩrekwo nĩ US Central Intelligence ĩrĩa ĩtagwo CIA na US National Security Agency ĩrĩa ĩtagwo NASA, as well as the Swedish government in her own country to modify atmospheric conditions, yani gũthũkia rĩera rĩa igũrũ via deliberate aerosol spraying efforts, yani na gwĩka ũũ. Rekei please tũtigakorwo atĩ gũkũ tũkorwo atĩ tũikare atĩ tũtiũĩ. Ũhoro ũyũ nĩ ũhoro mũru mũno, na ũhoro ũyũ nĩ ũgũtũma andũ aingĩ nginya marware na makue na gũkorwo na mogwati maingĩ. Thikĩrĩria ũrĩa ũyũ akuga, nawe wathiĩ YouTube-inĩ wathiĩ maandĩko-inĩ ma hau thĩ nĩ ũkũigua ũrĩa Green Party political leader ũrĩa augĩte wa kũrĩa Sweden. Na cuma iria ciraitĩrĩrio andũ kũringana nake nĩ aluminum na barium, na which have already been shown as accumulating in water supplies na in the soil. Atĩ nĩ cironeka nginya nĩ cionekete rĩu maĩ-inĩ ma andũ ma kũnyua na nginya tĩri-inĩ ũrĩa irio ciramera. Na gakiuga atĩrĩrĩ, mũchanganyiko ũyũ wa virus na chemical na viral fragments na cuma ũndũ ũyũ andũ matikwĩrisha, no mũhaka andũ othe a siasa mokĩrĩre maũndũ maya.
Well, we now have a Swedish official admitting that these toxic chemtrails that everyone wants to say are not real. In Operation Chemtrails, I know you're going to love this one. And shout outs to everyone out there across the globe that shares their information, that puts their pictures out there, their video clips, all the chemtrail activity that they catch. And once again, shout out to Operation Chemtrails, always on it, trying to get the truth out there. And as we see here, information coming out of World Truth TV showing that a Swedish official has now admitted that these are not conspiracy theory. They are very real. Some of us out here have known this for some time, especially when we have proof, pictures, video of the streams coming off nozzles, not even out the engines, like they always try to play it off as. Got so much proof out there, it's ridiculous. Them landing while still having their sprayers on in clips. I mean, some of you people are going to look up at the sky and see the sky crisscrossed like a checkered board. I mean, where you can't even see the blue sky anymore. And still say to yourself, oh, it's just normal. I wonder what it's going to take for some of you sheeple to wake up. Or if you're ever going to. Or if some of you are just going to stay in that denial till it's too late and you're running around like madmen in the street. You're begging for your own demise if you don't wake up quick. What's it going to hurt you to admit that they're doing something crazy and deadly, very suspicious? I look around and I see all these people in this world that don't even give a damn about their children or their family or anyone else that they're going to leave behind, just all about themselves. When everything that I do in this life is for my family and to give them knowledge and hopefully leave them something when I go, not leave them sitting in a freaking lie. But yet that's what many of you choose to do. Live a lie. You have all kinds of people out here on a daily basis showing you the truth. You continue to keep living that lie. Of course, that's not the majority of my subs. Most of you are awake on all kinds of different levels, and many of you are hardcore in exposing these chemtrails. Much love to you guys, man. I love all of you out there that stay on the grind, trying to get the truth out there, whether it's chemtrails, fluoride, vaccines. Miss LaRue, shout outs to you on that tip. All the Anons out there, Wrath, for the estate, all you guys out there that share information, Jules, Spiro, we're in this together. So, grab your camera. Next time you see this going on, zoom in and shoot back. That's the motto. I'll leave a link. It's Bendabu7. Eyes to the skies.
Muthikiriria ni wakiiguira mawira macio matatu maria marutwo ni ndagitari kuria UN ni mutumia naguo wira uria warutwo wa NASA ni mutumia naguo wira uyu warikiriria uria ndakwira ni ngatheti irandikitwo kuria Sweden ikiandika uhoro wa political leader wa Green Party kiamata kiria kiari guku kia Wangari Maathai. Mutumia ucio ri niwe waretie kuria thirikari-ini yao ari mutumia. Kwoguo uria ndiraugire atumia nio monaga gwati ugiuka na nio ma whistle blower tiga aria marothiete haria kuhua firingi cia werere kuria parliament. Firingi iria cia bata ni ici riu turahua thaa ici ati bururi uri under attack na ni andu marorongereirwo gukua hamwe na mazingira maitu mothe. Ino nio firingi yama aria marathiete kuhuira haria Uhuru magirwo gute firingi icio meti atumia nio moe kuhua firingi na riria riothe mukona kana bathi atumia marenda mahei nigetha magathi kuhua firingi kuria firingi ciama
Gikuyu